British Columbia Institute of Technology acknowledges that our campuses are located on the unceded traditional territories of the Coast Salish nations of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh.
Good afternoon. I'm Jacqueline Tsung with your news updates at 3:30. Breaking news. The provincial government has announced that Tumbler Ridge will be expecting a new secondary school following one of Canada's deadliest mass shootings at the Tumbler Ridge Secondary School earlier this year. Premier David Eby made the announcement on Thursday, promising that students would never have to return to the school where the tragedy happened. He says the current school will be demolished and the new school will be built on a new site. The new 6-month Broadway closure will lead to alternative bus routes and priority bus roadways as the construction of the Millennium Line SkyTrain extension continue. Reporter Bailey Pilgrim-Bahe has the latest.
The Broadway closures has sparked conversation regarding changes to giving buses priority on roadways. Currently at Broadway in Maine, traffic lights are set up to allow buses to move first. Dennis Agar, executive director of the transit advocacy group Movement, says he would like to see changes like this being made to the rest of Metro Vancouver.
We would love to see that in other places. I think we can point to this in other situations and be like, look, you did it for Broadway. Like, was that so bad? We can do this on Kingsway and on 41st and 49th.
Agar says he understands priority bus changes like bus-only lights or bus lanes are not feasible everywhere, but that motivation in both the public and government would help open more possibilities for roadway changes. Bailey Pilgrim-Pahe, BCIT News.
Lions Bay Search and Rescue says 2 hikers have been rescued after spending the night in the mountains north of Metro Vancouver as harsh weather conditions delayed rescue operations. Rescuers says the pair was planning to complete a 28-kilometer trail from North Vancouver's Cypress Mountain to an area near Porticove in a single day on Wednesday. But the full winter conditions on the trail left them stranded. They say the rescue was successful and the pair reached Lions Bay safely this morning. The Emergency Rescue Service is reminding hikers who are planning to head to the Alpine Trail to take precaution as there are still meters of snow on the route. The Kitsilano Pool has been a long-standing staple of Vancouver's coastal scene since 1978. Reporter Gus Johnson has more on the potential Kitsilano Pool renovations.
The City of Vancouver has just announced that they will spend up to $300 million to help renovate the Kitsilano Pool. These renovations have received mixed reviews from people online. Christy Emerson of Kit's Pool Swimmers says that for the renovations to happen, it must start with advocacy at the provincial level.
So there are different funding programs that we might be eligible for, but it really starts at the municipal level. There has to be, sort of political will to pursue that. So that's what our goal and hope is.
Advocacy groups are pushing for government funding, while others have concern the pool is near its end. Gus Johnson, BCIT News.
Residents in the Maple Ridge community are petitioning for more proper sidewalks and walkways in the Wanik neighborhood. Our reporter Leslie Rose has the story.
Wanik Lake residents are petitioning for walkways to be installed on 112th Avenue in Maple Ridge. The area is home to an elementary school, a park, and Wanik Lake Center. These roads have no sidewalks, and residents are growing concerned about the frequency of near misses. Local school parent Deepa Besasar says that the lack of walkways not only has a risk to public safety, but it also affects the well-being of the residents.
They're going to want to be able to go out for a walk. It's going to be a positive mental health, positivity, health-wise, more physical activity, happier because they get to see people, sunshine.
Over 150 people have signed the petition so far. Leslie Rose, BCIT News.
Calgary police have identified 16-year-old Angeline Boucher as a victim of a fatal stabbing in Calgary. Police say it is likely the victim was involved in an altercation with her attacker early Wednesday in a neighborhood in the southwest part of the city. Investigators say they don't believe the attack was random and that the weapon was thrown away in the area. No one has been arrested and the investigation is ongoing. Alberta's election agency says more than 550 people are likely to have accessed a voter list that is at the heart of a massive privacy breach that involved a separatist group. The group, called the Centurion Project, has said its goal was to identify and recruit as many supporters of Alberta independence as possible, ahead of an expected referendum this fall. President Donald Trump is threatening the European Union with a deadline for finalizing last year's trade framework. AP Washington correspondent Sagar Mugani reports.
President Trump is giving the European Union a deadline to approve last year's trade framework. The president says the EU has until July 4th to do so, or it will face higher tariffs. Last week, he announced EU autos would face a 25% tariff starting this week.
As usual, they were not adhering to the agreement that we have.
It's unclear if he now means tariffs would jump July 4th on all EU goods. The original framework called for the U.S. to impose 15% tariffs on everything. That dropped to 10% after the Supreme Court ruled the president lacked legal authority to declare an economic emergency to impose the initial tariffs used to pressure the EU into trade talks. Sagar Meghani, Washington.
A man who carried out a firebomb attack on a pro-Israeli crowd in Boulder, Colorado last June has pleaded guilty to a long list of charges. A judge sentenced him on Wednesday to life in prison for the attack that resulted in the death of an 82-year-old woman. ABC's Alex Stone has the latest.
After Mohammed Solomon pleaded guilty to carrying out the anti-Semitic firebombing attack on pro-Israel marchers in Boulder last June, hours later a Boulder County judge sentenced him to life in prison plus hundreds of years. In a statement through an Arabic interpreter before his sentencing, Solomon apologized and said his actions were not in line with the teachings of Islam. Solomon is an Egyptian national who prosecutors say has been living in the U.S. illegally. He's also facing federal charges that could get him the death penalty if he pleads guilty or is convicted. Alex Stone, ABC News.
A suicide note allegedly written by convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein has been released, nearly 7 years after Epstein died by suicide in a Manhattan jail. Epstein's former cellmate, Nicholas Nartaglione, claimed that he found the note tucked in a book in the days after Epstein's first suicide attempt in July 2019. At the time, Epstein denied being suicidal. ABC News' Catherine Felders has more.
So there's no confirmation that Epstein wrote the note, and in a jailhouse evaluation, he denied being suicidal. At the time, he told a psychologist, quote, "I have no interest in killing myself," but photographs retrieved from Epstein's cell after he killed himself in August 2019 show other notes, including ones with some of the same phrases.
If you're planning to make a trip to the popular Cultus Lake in the Fraser Valley, be prepared for big crowds. The tourist hotspot is seeing a surge in crowds, with growing concerns from local residents. Reporter Mark Zhuang reports on the region's efforts to manage the crowds.
As the weather is getting warmer, Cultus Lake has seen a spike in visitors. Although the crowds are good for business owners, residents are unhappy about the limited parking spaces and visitors not respecting the area. Ernie Vance, member of the Cultus Lake community, talks about things that could help when things get busy.
When it gets very, very busy and things start backing up, the Fraser Valley Regional District has put out signs at the highway. And I think Mayor Ken Popov even said that a couple days ago, is that they put out signs now that say Cultus Lake is full.
According to BC Parks, reservations from visitors for May Long Weekend has gone up by 60% compared to the previous year. Mark Zhuang, BCIT News.
The creator of the Oscar-winning animated film K-pop Demon Hunters, Maggie Kang, received a key to the city of Toronto where she grew up. Mayor Olivia Chow surprised the creator on stage at the Departure Festival today. The Key to the City is Toronto's highest honor awarded by the mayor to recognize the contributions of inspiring individuals. The film is expecting a sequel. I'm Jacqueline Tung, and that was your news at 3:30.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikki-King.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretanero.
And I'm Radhika Sikki-King. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
Good afternoon, I'm Nevin Yakel, and here are your sports news and headlines for 12:45. In soccer, a local BC group has approached the provincial government about wanting to buy the Whitecaps. The BC group is planning on putting in a bid for the team in an effort to keep them in Vancouver, following a bid from a U.S. business that plans on moving the Whitecaps to Las Vegas. BC Jobs Minister Ravi Kalan said that the group is not looking for provincial help and added it's a positive development for Whitecaps fans and for the province. In local hockey, Vancouver Canucks forward Max Sasson has just been named to Team USA's preliminary roster for the 2026 IIHF World Championship. This will be the Michigan native's first time representing his country in the event. The 25-year-old forward played 66 games this season, scoring 13 goals with 6 assists. The tournament is scheduled to start on May 15th, and Canucks fans have their fingers crossed that Sasson will make the final cut. Burnaby native Michael Bublé is known for his singing, but he also has a deep love for everything hockey, except one aspect. Reporter Emma Connolly shares how Bublé does not like to sing the anthem at hockey games.
Many Canadian singers have performed the national anthem over the years. Celine Dion, Alessia Cara, and Noah Reid, just to name a few. But we have never heard it from Burnaby's own Michael Bublé. He thinks there are better people for the job.
There's way better singers out there than me. I don't think I could even, my brain would even work to do it. I have massive respect for people that do the anthem because it's the one song where people that don't know any songs and can't remember the words, they know the words. All of a sudden, people that don't give a shit about it, they become the most patriotic, angry people ever. You're screwed. So it's like, maybe not. Maybe I don't need to do that.
Now, you may not see him sing on the ice, but you will still see him around the rinks, as he is heavily involved with hockey in Vancouver. Through his connections with the Canucks and ownership of the Giants, hockey is a part of his everyday life. Emma Connolly, BCIT News.
The NHL has announced its nominees for the Norris Trophy, the Best Defenseman Award. The nominees include Buffalo's Rasmus Dahlin, Colorado's Cale Makar, and Zach Werenski of the Columbus Blue Jackets. Dahlin and Makar were both major contributors to their team's success this season, with each of them scoring over 70 points and are currently both playing in Round 2 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Despite Columbus falling short of the playoffs, Zach Werenski played incredibly, tallying 81 points and also leading his team in points. Maryland racing officials are considering pushing back the date for the Preakness after the Kentucky Derby winner has pulled out. Dave Packer reports.
Kentucky Derby winner Golden Tempo will not run in the Preakness Stakes next weekend, instead focusing on the Belmont. It's the third Derby winner in the past 5 years not to be entered in the Preakness. The 2-week turnaround from the Derby to the Preakness, which used to be commonplace, is considered a non-starter for many trainers and owners, given that most elite thoroughbreds now typically go a month or more between races. It has Maryland racing officials considering moving the Preakness back from the third Saturday in May to the fourth. Dave Packer, ABC News.
In baseball, Framber Valdez, pitcher for the Detroit Tigers, has been suspended for 5 games after throwing at Red Sox Trevor Story. Gavin Coolbaugh reports.
Detroit Tigers pitcher Framber Valdez was suspended for 5 games and fined 1 day after he was ejected for hitting Boston's Trevor Story with a pitch during a 10-2 loss in which he allowed a career-high 10 runs. Valdez was at first banned for 6 games by MLB, which cited him for intentionally throwing a pitch at Story, but the penalty was reduced in an agreement between MLB and the Players Association. He started serving the penalty during Wednesday night's series finale, and barring rainouts will be eligible to pitch next Wednesday at the New York Mets. I'm Gethin Coolbaugh.
The Toronto Blue Jays have the day off after getting swept by their divisional opponent Rays. However, all other ALS teams play today and have a chance to move ahead in the standings. The Yankees tallied another win, defeating the Rangers 9-2. The Orioles game is now underway in Miami, where they can move 2 games ahead of the Jays with a win, and the visiting Red Sox will take on the second-place Rays in the AL East. The Mariners will also have an off day, with the only other AL West game being the Athletics at Philadelphia. The Mariners sit 1 game behind the A's, so Seattle is looking for Phillies to win to keep it close. In the UFC, the highly anticipated middleweight title bout will be on Saturday between UAE's Kazmat Chimaev and the United States' Sean Strickland. Fans are excited to see if there will be any retaliation from Chimaev following derogatory comments from Strickland. Those are your news headlines for 12:45. I'm Nevin Yakel, and you're listening to BCIT's The Crow.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikikane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretnero.
And I'm Radhika Sikikane. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
Welcome back to BCIT The Crow. I'm Adam Wang, and here are your latest sports news at 3:55. The Toronto Tempo will play their first regular season game tomorrow night against the Washington Mystics. Kia Nurse, who is the only Canadian on the Tempo's roster, stated she focused on preparing the game rather than focus on what this means for women's basketball in Canada.
Honestly, to me, this is just another basketball game. I know there's a lot of history and stuff that goes around it, but if I prepare any differently than it being another basketball game, then it'll just throw off my day, which will annoy me. So a lot of it has just been being excited to start another season and have the opportunity to get that going with this team and kind of see what we have and what we're working with as we head into it.
Native BC hockey player Logan Stankoven and Manitoba native Seth Jarvis are looking to keep the undefeated playoff streak alive, as the Carolina Hurricanes are looking to be 7-0 in the playoff. Hurricanes are playing the Flyers tonight at 5 p.m. Pacific time, as they're currently up 2-0 in the second round of the NHL. Train tickets and World Cup tickets just got a bit cheaper in New Jersey. The New Jersey Stadium is hosting 8 games this summer, including the World Cup final. ABC's Brian Clark has more on the detail.
A round-trip train ticket to MetLife Stadium for this summer's World Cup won't cost $150, but it won't cost the usual $12.90. That 18-mile trip from New York City is now going to cost $105. Officials in New Jersey say the lower price is thanks to support from sponsors and other sources. Governor Mikey Sherrill reiterated that soccer's governing body should be covering transportation costs, not New Jersey transit users. Brian Clark, ABC News.
Vancouver have yet to announce the drop of their FIFA ticket price, despite receiving criticism from local citizens online. According to Vancouver is Awesome, most of the tickets are sold out, although the reseller are still selling some of the tickets on SeatGeek for extremely high price, with many starting over $1,000. Team Canada's coach Jesse Marsh still haven't decided who will be the number 1 goalie for the World Cup between Maxime Crepeau and Dane St. Clair. Both goalies are currently playing in the MLS and both have inconsistent recent performances. Coach Marsh stated the competition is close as it's always been and hope both players keep pushing each other. The Stars headlining UFC Freedom 250 visited the President Trump's Oval Office. The main event features lightweight champion Ilia Topuria against the interim lightweight champion Justin Gaethje. Co-main will be former UFC light heavyweight champion, former UFC middleweight, and 2-division kickboxing champion Alex Pereira will make his heavyweight debut against the French kickboxer Cyril Gane for the interim heavyweight belt. The fight will also feature Canadian fighter Ayman Zahabi facing against the former bantamweight champion Sean O'Malley. Per Fox News, the UFC event is going to happen June 14th in the South Lawn of the White House to celebrate America's 250th birthday. In a Fox interview, UFC President Dana White announced the event will only feature 4,300 attendees, with most of them being military personnel. However, there will be an 85,000 additional tickets be available for the fans to watch on large screens at adjacent Ellipse Park. The 2-time MLB All-Star is suspended for multiple games for intentionally throwing the ball at an opponent. Per ESPN, Framber Valdez is from the Detroit Tigers intentionally hit Trevor Story on the Boston Red Sox after allowing 8 runs in the first 3 innings, also allowed 2 home runs. Valdez had a history with these type of actions, as last year he was accused of intentionally hitting his Astro teammate Cesar Salazar, which was his own teammate. Correspondent Gethin Kobau have more.
Detroit Tigers pitcher Framber Valdez was suspended for 5 games and fined 1 day after he was ejected for hitting Boston's Trevor Story with a pitch during a 10-2 loss in which he allowed a career-high 10 runs. Valdez was at first banned for 6 games by MLB, which cited him for intentionally throwing a pitch at Story, but the penalty was reduced in an agreement between MLB and the Players Association. He started serving the penalty during Wednesday night's series finale, and barring rainouts, will be eligible to pitch next Wednesday at the New York Mets. I'm Gethin Coolbaugh.
Thanks for listening to the latest sports news.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.
everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretanero.
And I'm Radhika Sikakane.